Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Kings of the Rift, your source for competitive League of Legends news and opinions, as well as your new source for League of Legends coaching. I'm your host, Gold Knight, and before we get into everything, I really wanted to say thank you to all of you for listening. Whether that's you on, on Twitter, or or Twitch, or YouTube, or Anchor, or any of the other podcast platforms. This podcast is available wherever all the other fine podcasts can be found. If you're on iTunes or Spotify or anything like that, leave me a review on there. It definitely helps to get this podcast noticed. And anywhere else you can find us, basically give us a follow, give us a subscription, like whatever that place has for you to do. Definitely, figure that out for us. Help us out. It definitely helps us get noticed and actually bring things up for the future, for sure. Any bit of help is fantastic, and your support will help me keep making this podcast. With enough support, the episodes will just keep getting better and better quality. We can get a new mixer, we can get a new microphone, we can get a new computer, however all this works. So we do that, it's gonna work out. So we're going to today talk about drafting. Drafting is something that I've been really kind of taking a look at for a while, and just kind of figuring out where we need to, um, where we need to go and where people need to uh, look at themselves or look at their teams even to figure out uh, how the play should be. Um, there's certain things within drafting um, that are unwritten and things that we just don't really think about. A lot of us who play will just be sitting there and we'll say, you know what, it is. I want to play Sejuani. I want to play Swain. I want to play whoever, and you just do that and you play it. And it doesn't really matter if you are going to win or lose. You're a one trick or something like that. You just want to play it because it's fun. But if you really want to get forward and uh, take take yourself to the next level in ranked or in competitive or in a kind of an amateur league or something like that, or even to a point in Clash. If you're really serious about Clash when that comes up and around, you really need to kind of take a step further when it comes to drafting. There's certain things that will just basically be easier to do once you kind of know where your drafting is going to come from and what the thoughts are behind um, actually drafting a composition that will win you the game. So there's a couple different things I want to touch on this episode. Definitely want to bring these parts here. There's going to be about, let's see, 1, 2, 3, and 4 things we're going to talk about tonight in regards to drafting. And I'll lay them out as we are talking right now. The first thing is going to be applying the Magic the Gathering coloring or the color theory to drafting. Um, color theory is definitely something that um, LS got into before on his stream a while ago. Kind of took off a little bit, then fell back, and then all this different stuff. He had a whole podcast together with Magic the Gathering, um, like player who also played League to kind of figure out the colors and all this different stuff. And I'll explain more of that when we get into it. Um, the second part here is advantages in the draft position. So, there's different things within the draft that, you have different positions. You have blue one, you have R2 to 3, or R1 and 2, yeah, and you have blue 2, 3, and so on. That's what I'm referring to when I say blue, uh, draft positions or red draft positions here. So basically, there's advantages of draft positions, which and kind of taking a look at what blue side and red side have for advantages here. And then also we're going to talk about best roles for your champions, or best roles and champions to blind pick. Um, and this is something that'll help you out with drafting. You're not just going to pick up your top laner because your top laner wants this. Well, that's easily counterable. You just shouldn't do that. I'm going to talk to you about the best roles to really pick, maybe best champions to play when it comes to blind picking your champions. Of course, I'm not talking about the blind pick mode in League, but just the blind pick, in a um, in an actual like draft, sequence. And then we're going to talk about the last thing being draft philosophies, and basically where we are going for structuring your draft. What the different pieces of uh, what pieces of your team come together to make your draft, and what you kind of have to look at and say, this is uh, this is something I can take from, and this is something I can take away, and how do I make now a cohesive draft, either composition, whether that is something like um, a dedicated composition, like just a press R comp, knock up comp, or something like that, focusing on Yasuo, or a bounce castle type one. Um, if that's something you looked into, or anything else, but you have to look at yourself and you have to look at your team for drafting and say, this is what actually is going to be, the best way that our team and our composition will play, and you'll figure it out that way. So let's get into the first thing right here. First thing being the applying Magic the Gathering color theory to drafting. Each champion in League of Legends has a color. Let's say color, where it points out the strengths and or weaknesses of that champion. Um, Basically, borrowing from Magic the Gathering, there's five, 6 colors basically, and basically there's aspects behind these colors. It's not just, oh well, this champion has red on his kit, so he's red. No, there's basically like one of 3 things that each color represents. For example, red and blue, which are 2 colors here, outline when things happen. So, red and blue will say, is it the early game, or is it the kind of the late or mid game for the champion? You can think of a lot of different champions. Which champions are good early game? Which ones fall off? The champions that you can say, oh, we scale with when you're playing in your own games here. Green, black, and white are how things happen. So things like green are basically, how do you play the game? Black is how do you play the game along, like a quest or a power, power at a cost. Is there something that that must be met to make this champion work? And of course, like white, it's basically it's versatile, that kind of stuff. That's how it's gonna happen. Will it blend easier? Will it figure things out on its own? And the last color here is actually not a color; it's colorless, where it's basically there's no real color for it. But it's a good thing to put it into its own category, so we're not forgetting things. And colors just indicates basically that a champion has its own dedicated theme, and that's something that really, um, you know, once you kind of take a look at it, you go, okay, that makes sense. Color, the colorless type of thing, really makes sense if you look at it and say, okay, that you have to play a certain way, or you have to play, something that's just that way with that champion. So we'll go through each color here. and we'll kind of take a look at maybe thinking about each champion, or not. We won't go through every champion, but we can get into this into a different episode. I can do a whole video of it on my YouTube here about it if you'd like. But we're gonna go through the colors. We're gonna kind of give ideas of maybe which champions are in this, either these colors or, what champions kind of fit here. So, first off, the color is red, and the color red really stands for aggression. It's also strength early. It runs out of fuel fast, and it's extremely weak if behind. So I like to think of champions like Renekton, things like Jarvan. Um, Jarvan's not fully red. I think Renekton is a little bit more red. However, if you really kind of think about those champions who you need to snowball, you need to get ahead, and if they don't get ahead, then you're just kind of, you're kind of lost at that point. I do like to think that, a champion like Draven is something that is um, very much so a red champion, but also has bits of black in him, where black is kind of has to play a certain way. He has to, has to play around his spikes, or the spikes being like power spikes for, getting his gold, and then figuring out you have to like cash in, otherwise he's not able to snowball. Let me just see right here. Let me see if I can find this here. Okay. So I wanted to pull up real quick the color spreadsheet, as it was a while ago here, and just thinking about like basically pure red champions, um, are things like, let's see here, are not pure red, but things like Alistar, where Alistar has to go in. He's aggression. He's going in. He's doing things. There's really not much else he really can do. Like his whole thing is aggression. He's going in. He's getting that knock up. He's doing what he needs to do. Something basically like Jace. If you take a look at the extremely weak if behind, that's something that I think really needs to be figured out with that. With the red side there. Katarina as well. Um, Kat she doesn't have stuns. She's an assassin. In the red category, you are gonna have a lot of assassins. There is basically if your champion needs gold to survive, at least in the early game, like actually kind of snowball their way, they're gonna be red. All right, so on to blue. The blue champions are control champions, or they have bits of manipulation, or speed, scaling. They're able to get in there and, be a bit weak early, but basically very massive late game. Someone that I like to think about explicitly with blue is someone like Veigar, who Veigar is can be relatively weak early, but he's just going to keep scaling. He's going to keep getting better as it's going on, and he's going to figure it out. He also has control through his baby cage that he has, um, through his AOE um, with his W. um, and it's very much so, the champions that are, people like Jhin, honestly, is a blue champion. Champion. He basically, like, the control that Jhin has in the lane with being able to, basically just get scaling constantly. As he gets more crit, he gets more movement speed, which gets more attack on his fourth shot. Like all this, it just kind of just scales and scales and scales. And at the end, Jhin is going to just be one-shotting you, basically. Kind of going through and taking a little bit more looking at blue. Obviously, a lot of mana champions, like mages and all that, will be um, your blues. I know it seems kind of uh, I guess intuitive. I was going to say counterintuitive, but it seems kind of it makes sense that of course the blue champions would be the mages, and that makes sense. I mean, if they're able to control an area and just figure it out, you're good to go. So someone like Nautilus would be a blue champion because he does have that control. He does have that manipulation his um, within his kit where he's able to figure out certain things for you. He's able to basically get in there and say, "This is what I'm gonna do right now." It's my house kind of a thing. And as it goes longer, he gets tankier. He just gets stronger, and he's able to just completely shut you down. Obviously, if you're able to prevent the Nautilus death spiral, which does sometimes happen as you are squishier as you get early. And that's one of the big things too. Nautilus is ridiculously weak early. I know because I've mained him quite a bit. All right, and then into the green color here, we have harmony, synergy, specific power spikes, timings. It's pretty bad on its own. Usually has to be with another champion or something. But it's really good at wars of attrition. So things that are able to kind of uh, stretch themselves out and uh, figure out themselves, you know, like something like Mordekaiser, where Mordekaiser is his power spikes are huge, and when he gets six, it's huge. When he has uh, the slow on his spells, that's huge as well. Um, Things like Lissandra when she gets her ult. Anybody who's really reliant on their ult, I would say it's pretty green there. Just because that's their thing. They're not a champion, let's say, until they get their ult. Um, Things like Riven, where the more items she gets, stronger she gets, you're good. Um, let's see. I'm trying to find a pure green champion. Honestly, right here is Shyvana. That is a champion who is specifically looking to get dragons. That is her power spike. That is what she's looking for, and it's something that um, makes her champion very unique. Um, Same with Skarner, who has his spires, and that's where he wants to play. Um, he wants to be in that area. However, what also makes him green is the fact that he's able to enable his allies with the use of his stun and his ult. His ult is like the thing for Skarner. That's it. I mean, Skarner is more than that, of course, but you pick him for his ult. That's You're not picking him because he's a good attack speed, or you're picking him because he's a good tank or anything like that. You're picking him because you want to play with his ult. You want to figure him out. You want to just skewer the people and bring them back into your team. So, you know, we'll look more on that as we kind of, you know, go throughout. If we do dive into the colors more specifically in a different, um, podcast or something. And then we get into black. So black is power at a cost, like I said earlier, and demands that must be met. So some like champion that would be considered black is something like Senna, where Senna has a quest. That was a bad example, not what I meant. Senna, Senna does have a quest. She is basically she's trying to get all of her souls and everything. Something like Shaco, where you basically want to be putting boxes around. You want to go and invade, and you want to just assassinate people. And if you don't do that and you don't use your invisibility well, Shaco's gonna be kind of useless. Like he can be used in just a normal way, but if he's focused like that, then you're good to go. Another black champion would be, um, to a point, something like Varus, because of the I don't know, the poison stacks, the little stacks that he has on his passive, or on his W passive. Um, Getting those off and uh, then popping, the poke and everything like that is huge for him. But of course, that's something that you need to focus around playing that certain way and not just figuring it out as you're going. You need to play it that way, either the poke or you can play it just on hit, however you do that. But that's kind of a thing that you have to meet when you play with him. Also, something like Yorick. That's a big one too, where Yorick is just going to split push. You really can't play Yorick, um, as a team fighter or something like that. Yorick is going to be playing in the top lane or playing in the bottom lane, just running it down, getting a turret, backing, going back top, doing this, going back forth, and just doing it. Like that's how he's gonna play. You have to you have to let him do his thing and not be trapped in, well, we're losing every fight because we're 4v5. At that point, you need to actually create a advantage for yourself in another point. So being something like um, an advantageous draft in the other side. So basically, with something with engage, so you can get picks, something, maybe let's say global like a Nocturne or something like that to cover the Yorick. That's definitely something that you can kind of figure out here and try to get into your help out those black champions, at least the ones who do use the split pushing type of thing here. Um, so then we go from black to white, and white is very versatile. Um, White is able to blend into another character or another color very easily. So a character that would be considered white is something like, Zaya. Zaya, she's not very anything on her own. Yes, she's a little bit aggressive, but she's in here and she's filling roles. A lot of white characters, would be a supporting character. You're not picking Zaya to destroy the lane or to do anything like that. You're picking her to do well in bot lane and just keep going. Keep your team comfortable in the bot lane. Something like Victor in the mid lane. Something like Zyra in the bot lane or even in mid, where it's basically she's able to just fill that role. Get the stuns, basically help other people out. She's not really the point of, like, she's not the focus of the draft. Um, Something like Lee Sin to a point. White, he's able to support his team by kicking someone in or kicking someone away. He has these different modes that he can play it, which is very cool. The different little modes that you can play through. And then, of course, we get into colorless. A dedicated stream or dedicated theme that is strong within that theme. A lot of times, the draft will just warp around them, and there's not a ton of colorless characters. Um, but if you look at something like, um, if you look at something like a Darius, let's say, um, Darius is going to be in the side lane. He's going to be wanting to take big fights. He's going to be wanting to use his ult to just blow open the game. Um, Something with Corki, let's say. Corki's another character that's colorless, where basically Corky will want to go in and just poke constantly. Like that's his idea. Poke, 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 back off, go around here, poke, 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 go over here, do this. That's fine. That's something that I think is really is perfect. Um, let's see here. I'm just trying to look at other things here. Things like Rengar. Rengar is very much colorless. He is purely colorless. Um, he is looking to be invisible. He's looking to be just an assassin. He's just wanting to be on his own. He doesn't want to be anywhere near, um, you know, like he's going to be hunting people down. He's going to be catching people on rotations. He's going to be doing stuff like that. And if you can let him do that, he will run the game over. But if he's not able to, he's not really going to be useful. He doesn't scale very very well. He's not great early because of his because he needs his 6. Um, he doesn't fill many roles. He has a slow and a stun that you have to like do prerequisites to get. His whole thing is that he's gonna jump on you, and he's gonna jump on you to kill you. And of course, if we're playing around that, we're playing around him picking you off um, and getting something like an Ivern with him. That's even better. Um, so that's basically what I'm talking about when it comes to color in League of Legends. Using these colors to draft is not it's not like the perfect way to go. You can't just be like, okay, we're gonna have a perfect like we're not just looking for only red or only blue or only green. We're kind of looking for a little bit of everything. But you need to make sure that you're not doing um, only everything. You want to be able to have something that is very much a, um, very much something that is, that works together. You can't have things that are really strong in the early game, and then something that's ridiculously, great in the late game. And it's just kind of interesting. Um, it's a way using the colors is a way to basically analyze a draft. Usually it's after the fact to gain the true advantage. Like take a look at it and say like, okay, um, you know, if this game is played out correctly, this is how, this team should win. Uh, color theory is not perfect, but it is a way to understand that if played correctly, each game should be played out this certain way. So, taking a look at that, that is it for color theory. That's all I have on the topic at the moment. I am going to take a little break here, and we'll get into advantages in draft positions, the best roles in champions to blind pick, and draft philosophies right after this commercial break. We'll see you on the other side. Welcome back, everybody. We are back with Kings of the Rift, and we're talking about advantages in the draft positions. Um, Now, in terms of draft positions, I mean blue side versus red side. There is um, weaknesses and strengths to both. I'm basically going to talk about the advantages because the weaknesses will kind of shine themselves in the advantages. Like it'll make sense once we talk about it and figure it out here. And one of those things are, there is blue side advantages as well as red side. Like there's not just one side is better than the other. Of course, that does happen with metas. Shifting and draft, changes a little bit during certain patches. But unfortunately, that's just the way the cookie crumbles. Um, so if we take a look at blue side, the biggest advantage on blue side is definitely the B1 power pick. The team with blue side has the ability to pick an OP champion. Basically, the champion that is just destroying solo queue, or has the highest win rate, or just can't be countered. And blue side also has the ability to take a point and just influence the way the red bans. Um, because if blue, like especially in the first draft phase, um, because basically if the blue champions play a certain way, or certain champions that aren't normal, you can get the red team to just ban out those champions. I like to think a lot about how um, I think it was the World Finals where um, they were just afraid of Caitlyn. I think it was Death's Caitlyn that they were afraid of, and they just kept banning it against him, and it just didn't get through. And but Caitlyn wasn't a huge pick. Like she was good at Worlds, but sometimes it wasn't fitting into the draft. It wasn't fitting into what they wanted to play. But it was a good champion, especially for Deft, and they just went and they attacked that. So that was a free ban that they were able to kind of garner favor with. Um, so in addition, blue side can also be the ones who dictate actually what happens in the draft. Um, if blue picks jungle and bot lane plus support in the first three picks, they have to they basically cause red to have to ban top lanes or mid lanes um, in response there. Because what if they ban out top laner or they ban out junglers and they've already picked a jungler? Well, what's the point there? If they ban out a support, well, we already have a support that's just taking it away from you. Which is why it's actually really good on blue in the first couple of picks here, obviously, to have flex picks because they might be trying to ban out your top lane. Oh, but that jungler you picked, he's actually a top laner, and he's going to be going in the top lane and just kicking butt there. So then we take a look at the red side advantages. And honestly, red side has a little bit different of advantages. Uh, red side has the R5 counter pick, which is the perfect, like, I love the foil between blue side and red side. The good thing about blue side is that they have the first pick. The good thing about red side is they have the last pick. I just love how that works out. It's stupid, but it makes sense. I love it. Red side has the ability to see the whole draft without having to commit to one thing fully. So basically, they can fit that puzzle piece into their team, especially if they've drafted well up to that point. They can basically say, "Oh, well, wait, they're all diving. Okay, let's pick and like I can just pick like a Nami, or I can pick Janna, or I can pick whatever to just basically disengage from that team, and now we just win. Like we countered them. I countered their whole idea of what they're doing. We're just getting out of here. So that's great. Or if the enemy team is all AD, red side, counter pick can just basically say it's time for Rammus, or it's time for Leona, or it's time for Malphite, or something like that, and just completely shit on their draft um, with no recourse, honestly. Um, so then you take a look, and their counter pick literally is direct opposition to what Blues picked. They can usually use it to further augment their draft too. If they were kind of half and half, half in on some poke and maybe some, like I can poke, but I can also engage, um, and the enemy team just doesn't have engage. Well, then we're going further engage. We're gonna just be able to go in on them, get picks, figure things out, which is fantastic. The red side also has a little bit of like a mini counter pick when it comes to the R2 and R3 picks. Because basically what you're able to do is you're able to say, oh, well, R2 is, a little bit something like we can set up for next, for R3 here. But R3 is where you really have the ideal early counter. So you can say, wait, I'm just gonna pick like you pick jungle and top and support or in mid and support. I say mid and support. That's fine. Jungle, mid, and support. Well, I'm gonna pick an AD on my third pick on red side, and then I'm gonna ban ADs that are good against this. Um, just to make sure that I have a good pick. Um, so I think that's the best. That's the best thing. For blue side and red side, advantages are you know pretty apparent, and I think a lot of times we don't really think about it. We don't look at it and say, "Oh, of course, like that makes sense. Like, of course, this is here and that's there. Like, we just figure it out." Um, but I think it's honestly something that we need to kind of take a little bit of a look at. And especially if you now that we're having the ability to swap like positions in league, it's kind of crazy. Positions in the drafting, at least with solo queue. Definitely think that's a cool thing. You can basically turn, you can swap yourself up to first pick, be able to pick, you know, a huge jungle champion if you want, or pick, a really good top laner if you wanted to, and you don't have to worry about basically figuring, oh, can you trade for me? Can you do this? Can you do that? Like you trade yourself up. You see if you want to, if you can do that, and you're good to go. But then we go from there, like we're talking about, having to blind the things like on blue side, using the power pick. What are the best roles or champions even to blind pick? Um, the best roles to blind pick usually are support, jungle, and ADC. Honestly, it's because a lot of times these roles don't have very much a full counter. There's nothing that is like a champion to champion counter. Um, the one thing I can think about is like top laners. Top laners a lot of times have a very certain uh, like champion to champion counter. One of the things I remembered back in the day was old Fiora, where she had like before she had riposte and all this different stuff, was really bad against old Pantheon, because it was just like it just was ridiculously good against Fiora. The ability to sit there and constantly throw Q harass as Pantheon, be able to jump on and stun her with just no recourse. The ability to do the whole bunch of stabs in front of you, um, like basically while she was having to melee and all this, was just insane. And the ability to like build up your little passive shield that you used to get as Pantheon, and then just you can just basically hide your shield until she's gonna go into Q, and then you can shield it, and you're good to go. Like she can't do anything to you. Um, but that's like the specific champion to champion stuff. But if you take a look and you look at actually like at those different there's these roles here, support, jungle, and ADC, they don't really have like specific champion to champion counters. They have more of countering of play styles. Where basically like, oh well, you're gonna pick Callista in the bot lane. Okay. Well, Callista's has to crush early. She's gonna do really well early game. She's gonna be probably picked with Renata. So here we go. I know what this champion's gonna do. So then they just like if you blind that, that's fine. It can do well into a lot of things, but then the guy goes, "Oh well, I'm just gonna pick Ezreal, or I'm just gonna pick Caitlyn, and I'm just gonna poke you. I'm not gonna let you get on top of me." And you can even match the Callista with more aggression, with something like Lucian, or or something with Aphelios or anything like that, and just kind of sit there and just figure it out. Of course, if there is an OP champion that you're playing, that you can play on your team, A lot of times it's usually good to pick the OP champion first, um, especially in the early season before a counter has been found. Because early in the season, OP champions are the thing to go for, and it basically is something that can just completely shit on the meta. Completely shit on whoever you're playing with. Um, and that's basically what you need to do to be able to figure it out. Um, you need to pick an OP champion, slam it as a blind pick, and just say, well, figure it out. Challenge that person to figure it out. Challenge the person who you are laning against, whether that's in mid, whether that's in top, jungle, whatever. Slam the OP champion, say, well, I'll see you on the rift, and just figure it out. Some good champions here that can be blinded. They can fit into multiple compositions, and really need to be flexible. Um, that's like the biggest thing with the champions that can fit into the multiple compositions. Um, and something like that would be something like Jarvan. Um, Jarvan can be picked a number of different ways, or can be played a number of different ways. Um, Jarvan can basically be a glass cannon where he just builds damage. He Qs you, takes your takes some resistances with his E and all that, and just jumps on you with his ult and you're dead. He just blows you up. Or he can be the tank where he's just jumping on, keeping you in the pit. He can EQ out, whatever, and then you're just stuck there. But it's flexible. You can fit them into different kinds of things. But then something like, let's say, on the ADC front, there's things like Ezreal or Lucian. Ezreal's able to be blind picked because he's safe, because he's flexible, because he can play, just regular poke Ezreal, whether that be, Duskblade Ezreal, or that be the uh, like tank killer Ezreal with the that one item that I can't remember. Um, or you can basically, just do him as like blue Ezreal with the, um, especially now blue Ezreal will be great because of the added sheen into the role of Iceborne Gauntlet. And honestly, I love that. I love the ability that we can just like a champion like this can actually be, you know, flexed in that many ways. But also Lucian. Lucian is not just the kind of run and gun gunslinger where he just, dashes in, auto, Q, auto, like all this sort of stuff. A lot of times he's an actual like caster. I feel like he's closer to a caster or to like a mage than a lot of other ADCs. Um, you can basically put Lucian in any comp and just kind of figure it out. He is a little bit low range, obviously, but he makes up for it with his ult when he is able to just completely kill a wave or able to attack, the enemy and just figure it out basically. Um, and Lucian's if you're good Lucian at least, you're able to just kind of roll over any other people that are playing against you. Then of course we're talking about blind pick champions, and one of the good blind pick champions or roles here is supports. And so things like Lulu, you can pick that quite any time. Just look at Worlds; they were able to just pick them or pick her Lulu, and she's just good to go. Um, However, whichever comp it fit in, with the ability of her to give someone a lot of health, give someone shielding, um, be able to uh, whimsy the person, and polymorph and all this different stuff. You're able to do that. You're able to get away with a lot. It's a good champion that you can just kind of say, well, we figured it out. You can just like you just pick this and it's decent into anything. And of course something like Nautilus, where Nautilus can just be picked and just you're good to go. Um, Nautilus will be able to be kind of scaling, and he'll be able to, um, you know, he's able to hook. He's tanky. He, um, weirdly enough, does a lot of damage once you get later in the game. With the tank items and all this. So it's just good that you can just kind of figure things out, and those are kind of things that you want to get into um, a blind pick champion. If you guys know of any other blind pick champions that you can think of, throw it in the comments, throw it in, Twitter, all this different stuff. If you can think of anything that off the top of your head that, oh, this is a good blind pick champion. I always pick this blind pick, and I never have an issue with it. And then of course we're going to round it off tonight, um, with all this draft talk, talking about draft philosophies and basically the way that we draft in general, really. Um, there's a number of ways to structure your draft. You can either just pick the most OP champions for each role. Just go down the list and say, okay, picking this best top laner, jungler, mid laner, bot lane, support, good to go. Perfect. Um, you know, Regardless of how that composition looks, you could do that if you wanted to. Of course, I don't recommend that. Definitely not something that, these things usually don't fit together. You might have an all AD comp, or you might have almost no range, or something like that. And it doesn't work itself out. It's easy to be figured out. Is the idea. Or you can obviously go a certain composition in mind. Um, you can do something like a bounce house composition where it's something like Camille, Jarvan, Galio, Callista, Alistar, where you're basically just trying to knock someone up all the time. And just do a bunch of damage, like keep them from moving, do all this. Um, that's something you can do. But with certain comps, you run into the issue that the other team is going to see what you're doing. A lot of times you'll see them, you'll see someone pick Jarvan first pick, and they go, oh, well, we're going to take away Camille, or we're going to take away Galio, or something. And you got to figure out when you're looking at your draft and how you want to blind pick, or just how you want to pick in general. Who are you going to pick first? What happens if someone gets picked away? What's your second pick? And not even just with the team seeing what's going to happen, but also they can just stay, well, actually, that's a really low, like that bounce house comp that I said here. That's a very low range comp. Okay, we're just going to pick range, pretty big range champions. We're going to pick things like Veigar. We're going to pick things like, or something mobile, even. Oh, they want to jump on me? Okay, I just dash out of the way, or I just blink out of the way, or whatever, and I'm good to go. You pick poke, you pick whatever, and now they can't get on me. Now they can't do anything. And even if they do get on me, what's going to happen? But there's a lot of other things too that need to be considered when figuring out the draft. You got to really think about the players' power picks, like your players' power picks. What is this person really good at? Is this person a great Sejuani? Is this person a great Kane? Even is this person horrible on this other champion? Okay, don't go that champion. Like that's a good thing to look at. You have to think about your team's preferences, like your team in general. What is your team likely to do? When you're looking at your draft, you can, draft up the perfect composition, but then it comes to a point where you just can't do anything because your team won't play that way. A lot of times you have to look at also the meta itself. If tanks are really weak in the meta, well then maybe don't pick tanks. Maybe that's not the way you pick it. Or, that can also inform your decisions when it comes to what's next to come. If tanks are huge, well then maybe you're drafting things that are really good against tanks. You're drafting Fiora. You're drafting, like Mordekaiser, tank killer type things, where you're able to just basically just drain stuff out of that tank. Trundle, all this different stuff. Then you have to actually look at also, which is one of the biggest things too, is your individual players' play styles. What is this player who you're drafting for actually like? How are they going to play? Are they okay with just playing, tanks all the time? Are they okay with playing the engage? Are they able to play, assassins? Are they just a mage player that, is just looking to be playing an assassin, because the team comp calls for it? Sometimes it honestly is easier or better to put a person who is a good, like, let's say mage player, someone who's a good mage player, to put them on a mage when they could be on a assassin, or that we need an assassin or something. If that person's going to actually just do amazingly on a mage versus an assassin, just pick that. Um, that's honestly something that I've ran into in my, in my career here, with some of my amateur stuff, and it can be frustrating. Taking a look at the draft and being like, okay, this will be perfect if we put in Zed here, or if we put in whatever, and you can't make that happen. But if a lot of times I ran into that issue where you just couldn't make it work, and then we just picked a mage, or we picked a let's say some kind of just other champion in that position, and we were able to just figure it out, and it worked out because that player was comfortable playing that style instead of playing in the unfamiliar style that he was going to be made to be in. So, if you guys enjoyed, the video tonight, and you enjoyed the podcast, and you enjoyed the stream and all this, make sure to follow us wherever you can, whether that be on Anchor, whether that be on Spotify, whether that be on Stitcher, or any of the other 9 podcast platforms that you're on. Hit me up there. Give me a follow. Give me a follow on Twitter. My LinkTree is in my Twitch bio, but it's also in my Twitter bio and my TikTok bio and all this different stuff. My LinkTree has linked to everything. To this podcast, to my stream, to my YouTube, to my TikTok. Was it on my TikTok? I don't think it's my TikTok yet. But still, we'll figure it out. And I actually really enjoyed this episode. I really like talking about the draft stuff. I kind of want to break down and actually do like a drafting class, like maybe go through drafts, all this different stuff. I think that'd be a really fun thing to do. If you guys enjoyed that, definitely leave likes, leave whatever, comments, that kind of stuff. And I will see you in the next episode. Bye bye.